Hey everyone, so today what I wanted to talk about is the Race to World First, which is a community event held in both Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft, where groups of players race to be the first to clear a raid tier. I am just going to flat out say it. Blizzard could learn a lot from Final Fantasy XIV.
I just wish I knew there was going to be like a legitimate world first race. I think I asked about it like last year, and you guys told me that like there wasn't gonna be anything organized, so I didn't even check. And like by the time it happened, it was already what was it on Twitch? Like some people started streaming it and had casters and whatnot, but it was already too late. Feels bad, but I'll be there for the next one. not there, but
Just for complete transparency and clarity, I am coming at this from the point of view of a viewer, not a participant.
oh, okay.
While I do love to raid, pushing for World First is, well, it's beyond me. But, before getting into what Blizzard could do better, let's talk a little bit about Final Fantasy XIV's race, which I wound up enjoying an awful lot. The reason I actually wanted to watch it was because the top two guilds in WoW were going to be in this race. Those guilds being Limit, who went by Elephant Herd for this, and Echo. I don't know why, but I was morbidly curious to see how these World First guilds would do in a Final Fantasy XIV race. So, how did they wind up doing in their very first race in Final Fantasy XIV? They did really good. How shocking, right? There's obvious overlap between the skill sets in these games, and if you got really good at one of them, it's reasonable you could get really good at the other.
Yeah, he's right. It would be fun to see Final Fantasy players join the world first in WoW, but like the amount of grind and the amount of stuff you have to do during the first few days of a patch to even get to the point that you're participating in the world first in WoW. Like, I don't get me wrong, I have no clue what it actually looks like in Final Fantasy. Like, I don't know what the grind is, but in WoW, some things are uncanny.
Anyways, Elephant Herd managed to snag 38th place. Not bad for their very first experience in a Final Fantasy XIV race, right?
Yeah.
This race, completely blind by the way, managed 56th place. By completely blind, I mean they didn't look at other streams that were more progressed. I do wonder how well Echo and Elephant Herd will do if they decide to participate in the next race, since I'd imagine this race was a bit of a learning experience.
I love how his voice is a little bit like mean and sarcastic when he talks about these things. I, as a person, really struggle recognizing sarcasm, but I truly enjoy this one.
Now, when it comes to who won the race, the Team TPS, or Thoughts Per Second, took the world first, and was almost 2 hours ahead of their nearest competition.
Wow.
I looked through past races, and TPS is relatively new, entering the races in 5.1, which released a little bit over 2 years ago. They dominated that race, with about a 13-hour lead on the kill, and came in third in 5.2, and since then have been getting nothing but first.
Wow.
Anyways, what I think would be really cool is if in the next race you had multiple teams at the final boss at the same time.
That'd be
and they were
epic.
all really close to the kill, and the winner could literally be the next poll. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I have a huge DDR background. The rhythm game, not the memory. And I love competing and playing that game.
Oh, that's so fun.
My point, when there's a tournament and the difference between first and second boils down to a single point, well, that creates insane amounts of hype. I guess it's also fun when someone just completely dominates and it...
I don't even know if there are places around here where you can go and do this. Like, now I really want to.
isn't even close. But what do you all think? Is it more fun when it's really close, or when a team just completely dominates? Anyways, I mentioned earlier that Blizzard...
Definitely when they're close.
Here. What I mean is, I think the way that Blizzard goes about releasing their raiding content leads to a less enjoyable race. At least for me. I know plenty of players love it, but these issues diminish that enjoyment for me. They can even trickle down to other raiders. You know, those not in the World First race. So, what are these issues?
Like, we have arcades, I just haven't really been visiting them. They're normally included, like, within the malls, and I'll be honest, I haven't really been going around malls in the past couple years.
The first issue I want to talk about is the PTR, or Public Test Realm. Essentially, Blizzard has their players do some QA for them here, where they test a variety of things.
For free!
Raid encounters. That means before a raid has been officially released, there are players that have not only seen the encounters, but also have direct experience with them. This includes on the highest difficulty. Any guild who is at least semi-serious about progression will go to the PTR to test out these fights.
Like, I would have legitimately been upset now if I was a WoW player and if I got spoiled like who the last boss is. But within the WoW community, it's totally fine. Like, I went to my subscription feed today, and I found out that Anduin was actually going to be one of the bosses in the next raid, thanks to the PTR, because there's already a video on the Anduin kill on PTR, and it's totally fine to just like go ahead and spoil these bosses. And I'm like, that's such a weird experience in comparison to what I'm now used to in Final Fantasy. Like, I would have been so mad. But like, no one gets mad at these things in WoW because they're just out there.
I never really found it to be all that fun whenever I had to go on the PTR and tested a raid encounter. They are buggy, incomplete, and unbalanced. Like I said, some of this stuff even trickles down to non-World First raiders. Anyways, the way I look at it is, it's like the race already started before the raid was even released. That is such a far cry from how 14 handles their QA. There is no PTR in 14. All the testing is done in-house. That is so much more fun as a raider, because
maybe because people who actually do their jobs go out and test these raids instead of having players who don't get paid for it test it for months for free.
You don't have to test an encounter that is full of bugs and unbalanced. And it makes the race more interesting because it is truly blind. Now, I have no idea how viable it would be for World of Warcraft to drop the PTR raid testing. In my experience with the game, whenever they don't test a boss in PTR enough,
ouch,
they are released in some pretty sorry states.
That's true.
The other big thing is that there is no global release in WoW. The patch that has the raid is released on different days, depending on where in the world you are located. This was always the big one for me. How is it a fair race when different regions have to start at different times? On the other hand, Final Fantasy XIV has its patches released globally, and sure, it can be annoying if you happen to be in the region where the patch drops at 3 in the morning.
But it's better than being on a European region and your only new content is going on Twitch and seeing all the NA people raiding, whereas you cannot.
But at the end of the day, if you are in a race to World First team, your sleep cycle is completely borked anyways. These teams raid for like 18 hours before stopping. But yeah, having everyone start the race at the same time makes the race better. As a viewer, I am more engaged with it when I know that everyone is on equal footing. There are no lingering questions in my head over who may or may not have an advantage. Finally, something that happens way more than it should in World of Warcraft is, raid encounters have been released in states where the fights are buggy, overtuned, and even have mechanics that need to get reworked.
The problem is seeing a world first race and seeing those people get to the point where they're fighting like second to last boss, or sometimes like the third to last boss is the hardest one, and then you see them being just massively overtuned and them not even being able to do anything about it during the race, because if one of the teams beats it, then all the other teams have to beat it at the same difficulty as well. So it's kind of it's really kind of annoying. And then after the world first race is over, then they will tune it or under tune it or whatever. And then all the rest of the people who want to try to do that same boss will do it at a lower difficulty because this one was clearly overtuned. So you never even get to experience the difficulty, if you want to, of the actual world first race boss.
But what really takes the cake for me here is, they do this during the race. Like, okay, imagine coming up with a strategy, spending time on perfecting it, and then the developers come along and hotfix the fight, completely nullifying that strategy. Now, speaking...
Yeah, for as long as no one's beaten it on that difficulty. If the boss is beaten, then they can't do it, I think.
As a raider, that would infuriate me. Speaking as someone following the race, that would seriously make me question the integrity of the race. This happened pretty recently too, on World of Warcraft's last raiding tier for its final encounter. One of the team members of Echo, a team that we spoke of before, tweeted, "Okay, this is just sabotage at this point." Because yeah, their strategy was completely nullified. Whatever lead they had was diminished. Now, Final Fantasy XIV has been pretty amazing with the polish of the raid encounters. From what I can understand.
Because they never release the raid until they've beaten in the house. And if they can beat it, everyone can beat it. So, not that they're bad, but like if they've... Don't get me wrong. That's not what I said. But like if they manage to beat it, and if they have the experience of the fight, and they know if it runs smooth or not, that pretty much makes it ready for all the rest of the people, right?
They haven't had to change a raid encounter in some time now. They did have their fair share of issues in the past, but it looks like they have been able to learn from their problems and iron those out.
I'm not sure if they okay, I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, that if one team beats a boss on a mythic difficulty within the world first race, that they can't go and change that boss for the rest of the teams. However, if no one can beat the boss on a certain difficulty, they will change and tune the boss mid-fight and mid-prog and mid-race, basically nullifying the strategies, as he said. So I think I do think that Sylvanas did get a bit tweaked. I don't actually remember what it was that happened, but I think it did.
You know, before playing Final Fantasy XIV, I used to just think that the way WoW did things was just how things had to be done. You needed a PTR to do QA testing. Raid encounters, they needed to be tuned up and polished after their release. Globally releasing patches? That couldn't work. Now that I know it doesn't have to be this way, I can't help but wonder why it is. If the team behind Final Fantasy XIV can manage these things, then surely the team behind WoW could also manage, right?
Right?
Anyways, that is all for this video. I hope you are all having an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing.
The difference is, well, there's a similar analogy to this. Do you know how, like, on YouTube, if you were a content creator, like, let's say 10 years ago, or a content creator on Twitch or whatever, you could pretty much release any content, and since it was new and hypey and whatnot, people did watch the content. But like as the time went by, the expectations of the audience and pretty much the competition that was coming onto these platforms was higher and was just on a whole different level. So we had to make a choice as an older content creator. You're either going to adapt to these new strategies and actually put effort, or you're gonna fall apart. Now, if you're too big, then maybe you don't have to put effort, which is what I think WoW was, thinking all this time. Like, they still had these old ways of doing things and making their games, thinking that no one's really gonna come close to them. But now when other games are like creeping up really close to them, and now that they're not at the very top, now they're having a problem with choosing to not adapt previously. And if they want to stay viable as or competitive as an MMO, they're gonna have to think about that.